All right. So this exercise is about symbolizing English sentences using the language of logic. So you've got the box on the top that tells you how each of the simple sentences should be represented with just one letter. And then down below you've got a bunch of more complicated sentences that you're going to have to represent using those single letters plus the connective symbols that we've got. Okay, so everybody's going to get a turn. Let's start at this table this time. Zach, do you want to start us off with number 1?
Sure.
If there are ostriches in Africa, then a large frying pan will be useful there.
A, arrow, B.
A, arrow, B. Good. So that one was fairly straightforward with that arrow symbol. First sentence is, of course, represented by A, if there are ostriches in Africa. The second sentence is represented by B, a large frying pan will be useful at breakfast there. And, of course, this arrow symbol for the conditional, the if-then statement, connecting. Good. All right, Nick, help us with number 2. If there are ostriches in Africa, then we will make sure to take some photos and we will tell you what an ostrich egg omelet is like.
Would it be A, arrow, P, and then the and symbol, dot thing, and then E?
E. Good. So it says, if there are ostriches in Africa, then we'll make sure to take some photos and we'll tell you what an ostrich egg omelet looks like.
With parentheses.
Laura. Okay, Nick, with parentheses. Where should I put the parentheses?
Around P and E.
Like that?
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's the best answer. Why shouldn't I do it like this? Why shouldn't I put the parentheses like that? Why is that a bad idea?
Because those two things don't go together without the other thing. Well, they do, but like it's just the other two things are kind of in a little group already. It just kind of works out like that.
I don't need to segregate it.
So notice this E means we will tell you what an ostrich egg omelet looks like. So I think it only makes sense that we're going to tell you what an ostrich egg omelet looks like if there are ostriches in Africa, right? So there's this connection between the ostrich egg omelet and there being ostriches in Africa that I think makes the English sentence very natural to read this first way. It's saying that if there are ostriches in Africa, then these two things will both happen. We'll make sure to take some photos and we'll tell you what an ostrich egg omelet looks like. In the English sentence in number 2, the comma there is also part of what tells you how the parentheses work. If we were going to do it this way on the second line down here, then I would expect to see a comma before the and if that's supposed to be sort of marked off as separate. The fact that there's no comma before the and in the English sentence is another clue that the parentheses should go this way and not this way. Okay. Jordan, do you want to try one? You want to try number 3? If the ostriches run if they see a lion.
I don't remember what if would be.
Okay. So let's get the letters down first. So first we've got the ostriches run. Which one's that going to be?
Oh.
O. And then we've got they see a lion. Which letter is that going to be?
L.
L. Okay, so we're going to have an L and an O in that sentence, and then we need a connector between them. So the connector symbol for if-then is the arrow.
Yes.
But our question here is about which direction the arrow should go. Should it say O first and then L, or should it say L first and then O? Any guesses about which one of those it's going to be? Laura, what do you think?
I'm going to show you the jump.
So Laura votes for the first one. If O, then L. So if the ostriches run, then they see a lion. Who else thinks it should be that one? The first one. Jake thinks this one too. At least a couple people on the first one. This is a tricky one that we haven't seen one like this, and it's actually the second one.
I get why though, because it's, if you're saying it, if they see a lion, then the ostrich should run. And that makes more sense than if.
So the trick for conditionals is you have to look at where the word if shows up. So far we've only done ones where the if came at the beginning of the sentence.
Oh.
This one, the if is in the middle of the sentence. And the thing that comes right after the if is the antecedent of the conditional.
Mm-hmm.
Here what comes right after the if is they see a lion, and that's the L. So the L is going to be the antecedent of the conditional. So here the order of the logic sentence is flipped from the order of the English sentence, and that's because the word if is in the middle, and the if signals a conditional starting with where the word if is. So number 3 was definitely tricky, something we haven't done before. But whenever you have something like that with an if in the middle of the sentence, the thing right after the if is going to be the antecedent of the conditional. That's what's going to go first. So it should be L arrow O for number 3. Okay, number 4. Maida, will you help us with number 4? There are ostriches in Africa, but rays or rees are South American. A and R. Like that?
Yeah.
Good. That's exactly right. So the word but also gets represented by that dot symbol, just like and. Another one we saw last time, I think, is although is also a conjunction represented by this and symbol. Okay. Number 5. If the ostriches and the zebras don't both run, then the lion is successful. Laura, do you want to try this one?
Not parentheses, O and Z in parentheses. Then S.
Okay, so this says if it's not the case that the ostriches run and
Just Z, it would be a Z.
it's a Z, sorry. I guess I misheard. If it's not the case that the ostriches run and the zebras run, then the lion's successful. That's exactly right. How did you know to put the negation outside the parentheses?
Because then it will count for both the O and the Z.
Good.
Could you go not O and not Z?
What about this? Is this the
oh, yeah,
same?
whatever this last one. That was
Yes.
right, but
This is different.
What?
So this says it's not the case that both the ostriches and the zebras run. So this is going to be true if the ostriches don't run but the zebras do.
Oh, okay.
This will also be true if the ostriches do run as long as the zebras don't. But then this won't be true unless the ostriches don't run and the zebras don't run.
So that it's kind of like a for statement.
That's right. So
that's why it's not four. So it's not.
this underlined part is equivalent to this, not O or not Z. So it says it's not the case that both of these things happen, and that's going to be true whenever, well, the first one didn't happen or the second one didn't happen. So it should kind of make sense why these two go together. Yeah. Okay, so nice job with number 5. Okay, number 6. The lion is successful only if the ostriches don't run. Jake, help us with number 6.
Not O, then O, not O, arrow,
So that says if the ostriches don't run, then the lion is successful. Okay. So This is another tricky one. We haven't seen one like this before either.
This is 6.
This is number 6. This would be right if the English sentence didn't have the word only in it. The word only is something new that we haven't done before. It throws a wrench in the works for this one and makes it mean something different. Yeah, Jordan?
It should be an S.
Oh, thank you. So, an only if is a kind of conditional, but it's sort of switched around. Laura?
Did we put the S in a parentheses?
No, that's not what we have to do. That's okay. We're okay with parentheses. We don't need them here.
If the ostriches don't run, the line is successful. But that works.
The line is successful.
So there's two ways to deal with an only if. One way to deal with an only if is just to treat it like an if-then and write the sentence in the order it's written. So you could do it as if the lion's successful, then the ostriches don't run. So this one is good. This one is not right. The other way to do it is to keep this order, but then you have to add negations to both sides. So this one is also okay. Or it's okay to put 2 negations there. That's fine.
That leaves, it is not the case that the
Ostriches
don't run if the lion doesn't
Is not
get its
successful.
kill.
So let me just ignore the 2 negations at this point, because that's just going to make it harder. So this says if
The ostrich runs.
if the ostriches run, then the lion's not successful. So
Oh, that makes sense.
A quarter.
So it says the lion's successful only if the ostriches don't run. So that means if the ostriches do run, then they're going to screw up the lion's plans, and the lion's not going to be successful. And that's what this one right here says. If the ostriches do run, then the lion will not be successful.
Well, why is it necessary to have that? Because the ostriches run if they see a lion. That's L arrow O. That's number 3. Why is it necessary to say only? Because the ostriches will only run if they see a lion. I mean, not everywhere they will.
So let's use that sentence to help see the difference. The ostriches run if they see a lion. That's probably true, right? That if an ostrich saw a lion, then it would run away. How about the ostriches run only if they see a lion? You think that's true?
No.
There's like lots of other reasons an ostrich might potentially run, right? Like to chase down their own
To practice running away
food,
from lions.
to practice running away from a lion, to run away from something else scary besides a lion, maybe, right?
Panther.
So that's an example where the word only makes a big difference, right? True that the ostrich runs if it sees a lion. Probably not true that the ostrich runs only if it sees a lion. Nick?
In number 4, did you say that but is the same as and?
I did.
Okay, thank you.
We'll come back to more examples of this at some point where I've had to deal with the word only because it's tricky. But here's the rule for dealing with an only if. If you have an only if statement, you can deal with it in one of 2 ways. The first way is just to write it down in the order that it's written. And that's the way I did this first one. It says the lion's successful only if the ostriches don't run, so we can write if the lion's successful, then it's not the case that the ostriches run. So that's sort of the easiest to get from the English sentence to the logic sentence, is doing it this way. But for some people, this one just makes more sense. And I can kind of see that. Where this one says, if the ostriches don't run, then the lion's not successful. I think it makes sense how that says the same thing as the lion's successful only if the ostriches don't run. So you can just go in the order that it's written, or if you go the second way, then basically what you're doing is flipping the order of the 2 sentences and then adding a negative on both sides.
So you flip everything.
That's right. Flip the order and add a negation on both sides. Jake.
Then why is that? Because how it reads in English, it could number 3 could be that. It could be the ostriches run. No, if the ostriches run, then they see a lion. No, that's only. Dang it, no, that doesn't work.
So yeah, so if 3 said only if, then it would work that way, right? Yeah, and again, that's the
It's
difference
just like
that we're just now learning is between if and only. Okay, number 7. If the lions leave their kill, then if the hyenas don't move in first, the vultures clean it up. Fair. Ready to give it a shot at this one, number 7.
K, arrow, not H, dot B.
K arrow not H dot B. Is that right?
V, because
V.
it's a vulture.
I guess I'm having trouble hearing today.
It's okay.
K horseshoe not H and B. Do you want parentheses anywhere?
No.
Okay.
You think that should be?
So whenever you have more than 2 letters, you're always going to have parentheses. And the reason for that is that
So
our connectives only connect 2 sentences, right?
between the K and the H parentheses?
Like that,
Yeah.
or like that.
The H and B?
You want those 2 connected?
Does that seem right?
Oh, the
Then the vultures do not.
Okay.
And then hyenas
So
That makes sense.
this says, if the lions leave their kill, then the hyenas don't move in first and the vultures clean it up.
Yeah.
Okay. That's not quite going to work. Does anybody know why? It's close.
Do you not need the front?
Laura.
Is it an or or no?
Here, is that what you're asking about?
Yeah.
So this, is that an or? It's not an or either. Yeah,
Is it an arrow?
it is an arrow. I'm going
Knew
to read.
it.
I'm going to read the sentence again and stress the important part. If the lions leave their kill, then if the hyenas don't move in first, the vultures clean it up.
It's like when you're in the car.
So it's going to be like this.
Do you still have the parentheses?
This looks like
Yes.
More than
What's that?
And in this one, it's actually easier to tell where the parentheses go, and it's because of the word then. So the sentence says, if the lions leave their kill, then, and you know what comes after the then is going to be the consequent of the conditional. So that means everything that comes after the then has to go in the consequent of the conditional. And that means it has to go inside the parentheses, so this whole thing can be the
Should we
consequent.
give them parentheses and besides me, just to make it like extremely accurate?
Where are you asking?
Inside the arrow?
Like right there
Yes.
or right here?
Right here. Yeah.
We wouldn't want to put a paren there
No,
because
not facing that way, just the other way. Because it's the consequent is the, so it wouldn't be by itself. I'm just asking.
oh, good. No. So we have 2 consequents here actually, right? We have the consequent of this conditional, which is V. That one we don't really need to separate off because
It's on the other side of that.
it's all inside this big parentheses, right?
Would
and
it be
then the-
technical to do it?
Um,
Technically correct?
No, you only want parentheses when it's marking off a sentence that you need to mark off as separate grammatically. And when you just have something like a V by itself, you don't need to mark that off because it's just sitting by itself. There's nothing to sort of separate it from, even if it's
Yeah,
as
'cause
the
it's on
consequent
the
of the
other side of
conditional.
the consequence, so.
Yeah, the only way we need parentheses is if there was something more complex than a single letter going on here. If, like, say, we had,
If it was a not V, would you do it? In the
That's a
second
good
case,
question.
Not
Um,
in this case.
No, the only way we're going to do it is if we have a two-place connective. The not won't do it. So the only way we'll use parentheses is to group something around a dot, a wedge, an arrow, or a biconditional arrow. So we'll put parentheses around all of those, but not around single letters and not around negations.
So no parentheses if there's nothing that comes after it.
I mean, in a way that rule is incorrect because there's parentheses here when there's nothing that comes after that paren, but I mean, maybe no starting parentheses when there's nothing coming after it, right? So like, you want to put a left paren here to group all this stuff together, but you wouldn't put a left paren, say, right here because there's nothing after the V. Okay. Let me erase a few things just to clear up the board. So just to reiterate, I'm going to rewrite it again up here. This is the correct answer to number 7. Okay. All right, back around.
We only have one left.
What did you say, Zach? Was it something appropriate that you should have said?
Well, it
Really?
wasn't not inappropriate. It wasn't, well.
Okay, we can talk about it after class. Let's talk about number 8 now. Neither the zebras nor the ostriches run if the lion is dozing. Neither the zebras nor the ostriches run if the lion is dozing. Zach, do you want to take a try at it? You want to pass?
Yeah, no, I'll go.
Okay.
Not parentheses Z and O and parentheses arrow. I think I drew an L.
It's supposed to be D.
Yeah, I think D for the lion is dozing.
Oh no, that is a D. I
Okay.
thought that was
So this says, if it's not the case that the zebras run and the ostriches run, then the lion's dozing. Okay. Sarah, do you want to try?
No.
Oh, sorry. You moved your hand a little bit.
No, I was picking this up.
Yeah, Jordan.
Shouldn't it be or?
Okay, so you think it should be or. That's a very good suggestion. And that's presumably because you noticed the neither nor, right? And I mentioned last time that's a negated disjunction, and not or. Good. Okay. Laura.
It should be,
Do you want to do it?
no, you go ahead.
Laura.
Okay, it should be, if D, then not, parentheses, Z, or in parentheses.
Good. And why should it be that way?
Because, as in number 3, it's the if is like kind of in the middle of the two.
Good.
So we'll just switch it around.
Yeah. So you've got an if in the middle of the sentence, and I said on number 3 that the rule is what comes right after the if is the antecedent. So basically, when you see an if in the middle of a sentence, you should just start there and say if, and then whatever comes after that goes first. And then
There's not an only before it.
that's right. So, so just to look at patterns, we saw a couple different kinds of things. Got sentences where you have an if and a then, and sentences where you have an if in the middle, and sentences where you have an only if
You have an
in
only
the
if,
middle.
dot, then. Only if.
Can you think of a sentence that starts with only if? What is that
Only if
The dot.
babies are born, then the world will continue. I've figured it out.
Oh, that's good.
No. Only if babies are born, they have small hands.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, they're good.
Then
That's a judgment.
and society will still.
So one thing you should notice is that it at least starts. It sounds a little bit awkward to start a sentence with only if. You can do it, I guess.
Would it be the world will continue only if there are babies.
I mean, that seems right?
Yeah.
So if we say, only if there are babies, the world will continue. That's a sort of awkward way to say it, but if you just flip it around and say the world will continue only if there are babies, it actually means the same thing. So switching the order there doesn't actually change the meaning. But we won't really deal with only if at the beginning of the sentence, because almost nobody ever says stuff like that, just because it is kind of an awkward construction. Okay, so just to remind ourselves, when you have an if-then, you're going to write an arrow, and in place of the dots here, I'm going to write some lowercase letters as variables. I don't know if we've talked about this, but I'll do this sometimes. You have an if P then Q, then you put the P before and the Q after, right? Whereas you have a P if Q, then how would you do it?
Flip it around and put a
That's
negative
right.
on each
You
side.
flip it around.
Would you do the negation though?
Um,
Or is that for the next
So you
one?
could instead do it this way, but that's, I think, much less natural in that case. I think this is the more natural way to go. What about for only if? If you had P only if Q, how are we going to do that? There's going to be an arrow.
Oh, flip it around and then do the negation.
Then Q.
Yes.
Yeah, so one way to do it is just with the P and the Q. That's this one here, where you just write it in the order that it's given.
Not Q.
And the other way to do it
not S.
is flip the order and add negations to both sides.
Not Q. Double not Q.
Wait, no, it's not double not Q because it's not.
We only need a single negation.
What?
Um,
No, for this one.
Forget
P
it.
only if Q. So do not. Oh yeah, never mind.
That's right.
But the
Um,
other one was not originally.
Yeah, in number 6 we had a negation
Yeah.
originally, so we ended up adding a negation to get 2,
Like math.
and they cancel out, just like when you multiply negative numbers in math. 2 negations cancel out. Okay, I think that's it for number 28. So after we've gone through it, does that stuff make sense about how we deal with if versus if in the middle versus only if?
Yep.
Okay. Do you have a question, Nick?
So then what's the difference between if P then Q? So there's no difference between if P then Q versus P only if Q?
That's right. These are equivalent.
Okay. It's just worded
And
differently.
it's this one, the if in the middle of the sentence, that's actually really different, that has the potential to throw you.
Well, is it only equivalent? I mean, it's only equivalent in form, in like sign form, not in English.
Well, I mean, you can put only in front of if P then Q, and then the only if P then Q, and then it kind of makes more sense why it's like.
Well, so putting an only in here would change it. But if P then Q and P only if Q, say the same thing. I mean, a slight difference of, I don't know, I'm not sure what, emphasis or something, but
What would be different? If
they'll have the same truth value at least. Like, if this one's true, then this one's got to be true, and vice versa.
What would be different if you put it only in front of it?
So that would be something like, only if babies are born, the world will continue, or something like that. And that's the kind where I wanted to say, that sort of doesn't sound quite right to me. There seems like, I think there's something at least a little bit ungrammatical about starting a sentence with an only if. Yeah.
Is that grammatically correct?
Who knows? Okay. This is not grammar class.
Yeah. Okay. So that was number 28. We've got a little bit of time left. I want to move on to number 29.
Did we receive number 29?
I believe people received 29. Is that correct? Who has 29?
Anyone need 29?
I need 29.
Oh, okay.
Who needs it? Who has it?
Looks like most people
I
need it.
have
Like
it.
Okay, yeah, I got
6
it.
people have
I have a
it.
bunch of them.
Oh, has to
What was 44?
Would you like one?
Not good.
Go.
This one weirded me out because I didn't understand it.
There's those.
I got it.
Oh, excellent.
Yep, there was just enough.
All right. So most people haven't done this before, so I'm not expecting that you'll know the answers already. We're just going to work through them together. So Jordan, you want to start us off with number 1?
Sure. It should be D arrow A.
Good. And how did you know to put it in that order?
Because the if is in the middle of the sentence.
Exactly. So what comes after the if goes first. Good. All right. Maida, will you help us with number 2? Carol and Betty won't both go.
Not parentheses C and B.
Perfect. How did you know to put the negation outside in front?
Because it's the case that they both won't go, not just one.
That's right.
What is a name?
What they're saying will not happen is that both of them together go, right? So what's negated is that one and the other one is going. So we need the negation out front of the conjunction. Nick. Yeah.
Okay, so then for number 3, the not wouldn't be in front of the parentheses because it's neither of them will go.
In this, for number 3, we are going to put a negation up front. What should I put for the rest?
It should be in parentheses A or B.
That's right. So not both is going to be negated conjunction. Neither nor is going to be a negated disjunction. Okay. Fair. Do you have this one? Did you get a copy number 29?
Yeah.
Great. So let's do number 4. Although Art will go, Don won't.
I'm looking at the not both thing.
Ignore it because
Oh, okay.
not both isn't in that sentence, right? Yeah, we talked about that
But
for
not
number
both
2 and 3.
Yeah.
Had won't both and neither nor. Yeah,
They're
ignore that
not
for number 4.
both going, 'cause
That's
Art's
right.
going, but
So
Dawn
that's
won't.
right.
So.
The tricky part of this one is the although.
Although,
Like
yeah,
how,
that's what confused
what are we
me.
connecting there? So let's ignore that for a second and get the parts we know down. So we know it starts with Art will go, right? So how are we going to represent that?
A.
A. And then Dawn won't go, so how are we going to do that?
Not
And not.
and not.
Not.
Although
That's right.
Art and not.
So we're going to represent the although with a conjunction. Because it's telling us that these two things are happening. Art's going to go and Dawn won't go. We're going to use the dot, the conjunction symbol for and is the main one, but then also but really means the same thing, but
But.
when you say but, usually you're drawing attention to a contrast between the first thing and the second thing. This thing and also this thing, but it's different, so I'll say but in between to signal that
But.
shift.
Not.
And then it's the same with although, but it's also indicating a conjunction, but again with a contrast between the first one. Art's going to go and Dawn won't. Although Art will go, Dawn won't. And the although is telling you here this first thing is different than the second thing is going to be.
Is there a conjunction for although? Or
Yeah, that's this conjunction right there.
the dot?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's the same symbol as the conjunction for and but. A tricky one for although is that the although comes at the beginning of the sentence and the conjunction goes in between those two things. So although is a little bit trickier than the other conjunctions.
Yeah.
It's not true that
Okay. Nick, will you help us with number 5? Carol will go only if Art will.
That's C arrow A.
Good. How did you know to put it in that order?
Because I looked up at the board where we had just written it, but other than that, it's because even though the if is in the middle of the sentence, it's still if Carol does something, then
Carol's an antecedent.
Art will go.
That's right. Yeah, it says Carol will go only if Art will. So that tells us like Carol's waiting on Art to decide whether she's going to go or something like that. So you know that if Carol decides to go, then Art's going too. So I think that's a good way to think about it. Yeah, we know that if Carol will go, then Art will too. And I like the way you talked through that, Nick, that I can give you some rules, some heuristics, some guidelines that are going to help you figure these things out. But if you get stuck and think, I don't know how to work with one of these right now, you can also just think it through in the way Nick did. And if that works for you, then go with that. Or if that doesn't help you and you like to stick with these rules, then stick with the rules. Either way will work. Okay, number 6. If Carol won't go, then neither will Betty. Jake, do you want to get number 6 for us?
Not C to arrow not B.
Oh, not B.
Yeah.
Must be what you said. So that says, if it's not the case that Carol will go, then it's not the case that Betty will go. The word neither can be tricky. Sometimes you'll see a neither nor that tells you you've got a negated disjunction. But if you just have the word neither on its own, really all that tells you for sure is that you're going to have a negation. It might not be a disjunction unless you've got neither and nor together. Then you're definitely going to have that negated disjunction.
Could we put not parentheses C then B?
Could we put that? So that says it's not the case that if Carol will go, then Betty will. Does that sound the same? Sounds pretty different, and it's definitely pretty different.
Okay.
Yeah. That's not going to be the same. In fact, I'm going to, just to emphasize this point, you remember when we first talked about conditionals, we learned that the only time a conditional is false is when the antecedent is true and the consequent is false. So the only way a negated conditional is true is if the antecedent is true and the consequent is false. So this is actually equivalent to this, C and not B, which I think obviously looks very different than if not C, then not B. Okay, number 7. Art will go only if neither Betty nor Carol does. Laura, want to take a crack at this one?
If A, then not, parentheses B or C, and parentheses.
If A, then not, parentheses, B or C.
I didn't know.
That's perfect. So this is a case where I think once we get sort of more complicated conditionals like this one, it definitely seems easier to me to write it down in the order it is with that only if statement, rather than trying to reverse the order and negate both sides. You could do that, but I think it'd be harder to do and easier to make a mistake. So yeah, I like this answer. Okay, number 8. Both Art and Carol will go, but Don won't. Maya does. You number 8 for us?
Parentheses A and C, parentheses A and not D.
Good. Yeah, that's exactly right. Art and Carol will go, and it's not the case that Don will go. Okay. I guess we'll just keep going for a couple more minutes. Number 9. It's not true that neither Betty nor Carol will go. Jake.
This is might not be right, but it's not parenthesis, not B or not C.
Okay, so
If you
you
just write it B or C.
Yeah.
let's think it through. This is a tricky one, right? With all the
Yeah.
knots in there.
I just like, I can figure it out.
Okay, so first of all, the sentence starts with it's not true that. So we know we're going to have a single negation out front of whatever else happens, right?
Yeah.
So let's set that aside. So it's not true that. We know we've got that out front. Next part. Neither Betty nor Carol will go. Now, if we just had neither Betty nor Carol will go, how would you do it, Laura?
Could you do a double negation, or would that cancel out?
We can do a double negation.
Double parentheses.
So double negated something is equivalent to unnegated, the same thing, right? So just like multiplying negative numbers, 2 of them cancel out.
Oh, so is that?
But this is a perfectly good sentence, just like -5 times -5 is a perfectly good multiplication.
Wait, is it wrong?
So
Double negative?
we are in fact going to end up having a double negative.
Well, if
But-
you solve this, you would take out all the negatives.
It's
Here's
going
the,
to
here's
be
the part I
in
want to get
parentheses.
clear on though. Ignore the first negative.
Yeah.
Tell me about neither Betty nor Carol would go. How would we represent that all on its own? Zach?
It would be neither B and then a or symbol C.
Like that?
Yep. Parentheses are on the B and the C.
Like that, right? So that's how we do neither Betty nor Carol will go, because that's a negated disjunction. That's this rule here that I wrote there.
So would you do double negative and that? Or would you?
That's right. So how we're going to have it is there's going to be a not out front for the it's not true that, and then this bit. So we'll get 2 negations, B or C.
It's as in the parentheses? For the-
So these will go right out front.
Without 2 sets of parentheses?
Just one set of parentheses.
Yeah. And so.
Could there be 2 sets of parentheses?
You could, and some logicians actually care about doing it that way.
That's what
But I think it's not ambiguous that because this negation has to modify this negation. That's the only thing it can do. So I don't require parentheses there, but I also won't complain if you put them there.
You won't complain, but will it bother you?
It will bother me a little bit because it's wrong. So that's how I would do number 9. It's not true that neither Betty nor Carol will go. Now, this is equivalent to Betty or Carol will go. And, you know, I said, as a rule, on a test, I'll accept anything equivalent. But in this case, I think it's pretty obvious how important the 2 negations are to the meaning of the sentence. When you say, it's not true that neither Betty nor Carol will go, there's something... The negations are important to what that sentence is trying to say.
How come we can have 2 knots right next to each other?
It
How
just
come we
take-
can have 2 knots right next to each other?
it's like -5 times
Yeah, I mean, because the way these symbols work is they allow you to take any sentence and turn it into another sentence by adding a connective symbol. So you can take any old sentence and put a negation in front of it. And that means you can start with, the sentence P, you can put a negation in front of that, and you can put another negation in front of that, and so on and so forth. So yeah, I mean, you're allowed to combine these symbols in all sorts of ways. Whenever you've got a sentence, you can get the negation of that sentence. Okay, I think this is a good stopping point. So we got up through number 9 on sheet 29. So I'll remember that for next time. Anybody have plans for Thursday? What you up to?
Sleeping. Is that Thanksgiving?
No. Turkey Day is on a Wednesday this year. Tomorrow?
Is that your joke?
That's his joke.
Why are you joking?
Because you said something silly.